Book 1, Foundations, the Architecture of Your Mind. Chapter 1, The Two Worlds You Live In. Chapter Summary. We'll explore the fundamental difference between your inner mental environment and the outer physical world. Understanding these two distinct realities, one made of energy and beliefs, the other of atoms and time, gives you the master key to all personal change. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's the practical foundation for everything that follows. Deep dive, the hidden architecture of experience. Let me share something that took me years and a fortune in trading losses to understand. You don't live in one world, you live in two. And the one you pay less attention to is actually running the show. The first world is obvious. It's the physical environment, the chair you're sitting in, the screen you're reading from, the room around you. This world operates on rules we all learned in school. Cause and effect, time moving forward, objects taking up space. You can touch things in this world. You can measure them. But there's a second world. And here's where it gets interesting. Your mental environment, everything happening inside your skull, operates on completely different principles. Your beliefs, memories, emotions, expectations, fears. These aren't made of atoms. They're made of energy. And energy doesn't follow the same rules as physical objects. Think about this. A surgeon can open your brain and never find your beliefs. They won't locate your memories of childhood or your fear of rejection sitting in some corner of tissue. Yet these things exist. They're real. They shape every decision you make. They just exist as energy. Electrical impulses, chemical patterns, neural networks storing charged experiences. Here's why this matters more than you might think. The mental environment doesn't decay with time the way physical things do. A painful memory from when you were 7 years old still carries the same emotional charge today. Time doesn't heal emotional wounds automatically. That saying is wrong. What actually happens is we learn to hide from them, build defenses around them, or numb ourselves to them. But the charge remains. Now let me give you an example that will make this concrete. Imagine a child who gets severely bitten by a dog. In that moment, his mental environment records the experience with intense negatively charged energy, terror, pain, shock. But here's what happens next that most people don't understand. Through a natural process called association, that child's mind automatically links everything present in that moment, the barking sound, the dog's fur color, maybe even a song playing on a nearby radio, to the pain of the bite. From that day forward, every dog he encounters triggers that stored fear. Not just the dog that bit him, every dog. His mental environment, trying to protect him, now perceives all dogs as threats. The fear is real to him. His body responds as if under attack. And here's the crucial insight. The fear doesn't come from the friendly golden retriever wagging its tail in front of him. That dog isn't threatening. The fear comes from inside him, from the energy stored in his mental environment. He's experiencing his past, not his present. This same mechanism operates in every area of your life. When you feel inexplicable anxiety putting on a trade, when you find yourself freezing up at the moment you need to act, when you sabotage yourself just as success seems within reach, you're experiencing stored energy from your past projected onto your present moment. The market didn't make you afraid. The woman across the room didn't make you nervous. Your mental environment, the accumulated energy of your life experiences, shapes what you perceive and how you feel about it. Key takeaway: you don't react to the world as it is. You react to the world as your mental environment has programmed you to perceive it. Master your inner world, and your outer world transforms. Reflection prompt. Think of a situation where you had an emotional reaction that seemed out of proportion to what actually happened. What past experience might have been charging that reaction? Chapter 2. Beliefs are your operating system. Chapter summary. Beliefs are not just ideas you hold, they're energy structures that filter what you perceive, determine what you feel, and control what actions seem possible. Understanding how beliefs form, operate, and can be changed is the foundation of all self-mastery. We'll explore the closed-loop nature of belief systems and why simply knowing something intellectually isn't enough to change behavior. Deep dive. The hidden programmers of your reality. Let me ask you something. Do you believe trading is difficult, or do you believe it's easy? Your answer determines everything, not just your attitude, your actual results. Because here's what makes beliefs so powerful and so dangerous. They create closed-loop systems that constantly reinforce themselves while blocking out contradictory information. Let me show you how this works in practice. A trader has a few quick winning trades early in his career. From these experiences, he forms a belief: trading is easy. Now watch what happens. That belief begins acting as a filter on his perception. When he sees market information that confirms trading can produce quick profits, he notices it. When the market shows danger signals, complexity, or reasons to be cautious, his mental filter screens it out, not consciously, but automatically. He takes bigger risks than he should because his belief tells him the downside is minimal. When he loses, he rationalizes. Bad luck, a fluke, the market being irrational. He doesn't learn from the loss because his belief system won't let him perceive it as meaningful feedback. Eventually, unless he forcibly breaks this closed loop by confronting reality, he loses enough money that the pain of maintaining the illusion becomes greater than the pain of admitting he was wrong. This is what I call a forced awareness, when the market, or life, rips away your illusions and makes you see. Now, beliefs don't just filter what you see. They also determine what you feel you deserve. And this is where things get really interesting. There are successful traders who can consistently make money day after day until they hit a certain threshold. Then, without understanding why, they proceed to give back all their profits in one or two spectacularly bad trades. After losing enough, they go back to making money again, and the cycle repeats. This isn't coincidence. This isn't bad luck. This is a belief system at work. Somewhere in their mental environment is a belief that conflicts with having that much money. Maybe they learned growing up that money should come from hard physical labor, and trading feels too easy. Maybe they absorbed religious teachings about the immorality of taking money from others without providing tangible goods or services. Maybe they internalized that they don't deserve abundance. Here's the thing. You may not even consciously remember forming these beliefs. You may not be able to articulate them if asked. But the energy of these beliefs is still active in your mental environment, and when your trading success violates their terms, that energy builds up until it discharges, usually through self-sabotaging behavior. I've seen traders who could predict market moves with uncanny accuracy but couldn't make money. They'd know exactly what was going to happen. Tell everyone who'd listen, watch it happen exactly as predicted, and never put on a single trade. Or they'd put on a tiny position that didn't matter. Their beliefs about themselves, about money, about what they deserved, these invisible forces overrode their conscious knowledge every time. Let me share a personal example. When I first moved to Chicago to become a trader, I had a belief that being successful meant having expensive things. So I had a Porsche, a Gold Coast apartment, and was maintaining a house in another state. My lifestyle expenditures far exceeded what I could afford. Underneath that was a deeper belief that my worth as a person was measured by my possessions. When I started losing money, I couldn't accept it. My belief system wouldn't let me see what was happening. I kept trading bigger, hoping to make back losses. I filtered out every danger signal the market was sending. And when I eventually lost everything, the car, the apartment, the house filed for bankruptcy, I discovered something surprising. I was still alive. I could still think. I was still me. The things I'd lost weren't actually parts of my identity. They were just symbols I'd attached to my identity. That forced awareness, painful as it was, began a process of fundamentally rebuilding my beliefs about who I am and what I deserve. Key takeaway. Your beliefs about what's possible and what you deserve create invisible ceilings on your success. You can have perfect strategy and still fail if your belief system is programmed for failure. Reflection prompt. What's one area of your life where you keep hitting the same ceiling? What belief might be setting that limit? Chapter 3. The Energy of Experience. Chapter Summary. Every experience you've ever had is stored in your mental environment as charged energy, positive or negative. These charges don't dissipate with time. They continue influencing your perception and behavior until you actively transform them. Understanding the properties of mental energy, how it creates fear cycles, how it narrows perception, is essential for anyone who wants to perform under pressure. Deep dive. Why time doesn't heal all wounds. Let's talk about what actually happens when you have an experience. Your five senses take in information from the environment. That sensory data is transformed into electrical impulses and transmitted to your brain. But the energy doesn't stop there. Each experience gets encoded with an emotional charge. Positive if the experience was pleasurable, negative if it was painful. The intensity of the charge corresponds to the intensity of the experience. A child being lovingly held while being fed experiences positively charged energy, safety, warmth, satisfaction. A child being screamed at and spanked experiences negatively charged energy, fear, pain, confusion. Both experiences are stored. Both become part of the architecture of that person's mental environment. Now here's what most people don't understand. These stored charges don't weaken over time. The body heals because it's physical. Cells regenerate. Tissue repairs. But mental energy isn't physical. The electrical charge of a traumatic memory from 30 years ago is just as potent today as when it was first encoded. What actually happens is that people learn to avoid triggering these charged memories. They build defenses, rationalizations, justifications, denial, substance use, anything to keep from feeling that stored pain. But the charge remains, waiting to be activated. And when it activates, something crucial happens. Your perception narrows. Fear, which is the experience of negatively charged energy being triggered, has one primary function: to help you avoid threats. It does this by focusing your attention exclusively on the perceived danger. When you're afraid, you can't see opportunities. You can't perceive choices. Your cognitive bandwidth shrinks to a single channel: the threat. I've watched this happen countless times with traders. A trader puts on a position and it immediately goes against him. If he has unresolved pain around being wrong or losing money, that fear activates. His attention narrows. Instead of objectively assessing what the market is telling him, which might show him an opportunity to reverse his position and profit, he focuses only on information that suggests the market will come back and make him whole. He filters out the mounting evidence that he's wrong until the loss becomes so catastrophic that it breaks through his defenses. But here's the really interesting part. Positive energy works in exactly the opposite way. When you're operating from positively charged energy, confidence, curiosity, excitement, your perception expands. You notice more. You perceive more possibilities. Time seems to speed up because you're so engaged. Learning accelerates because you're not filtering out information that might threaten you. This is why some traders can see market patterns that others miss. It's not that they have better eyes or faster brains. It's that they're not spending mental energy on defending against perceived threats. Their bandwidth is free to perceive what's actually happening. I experienced this firsthand after losing everything. Once I'd hit bottom, once my worst fear had actually happened and I discovered I could survive it, something shifted. The fear that had been narrowing my perception for years just dissolved. Suddenly I could see market patterns I'd been oblivious to. The information had always been there. I just hadn't been able to perceive it through the filter of my fear. Let me give you another example that shows how this works with people. Two traders look at the exact same price chart. One sees a terrifying pattern that makes him afraid to enter. The other sees a clear opportunity and acts decisively. Same information, completely different experiences. The difference isn't in the market. It's in the mental environments of the two traders. The first trader has stored negative energy around previous losses. When he sees a pattern that resembles a past losing trade, that energy activates. Fear narrows his perception to focus only on what could go wrong. He freezes or exits too early. The second trader has processed his past losses differently. Maybe he's done the work to release the emotional charge from those experiences. When he sees the pattern, he perceives it objectively, odds, risks, potential reward, and acts accordingly. The past doesn't hijack his present. Key takeaway: the emotional charge of your past experiences is either narrowing your perception or you've learned to release it. There's no neutral ground. Unprocessed fear always costs you in missed opportunities, hesitations, and self-sabotage. Reflection prompt: what's one fear you know is affecting your decisions? What's the earliest memory you have of feeling that fear? Chapter 4. the adaptation imperative. Chapter summary. The physical environment is constantly changing, but your mental environment doesn't automatically update. This mismatch between a changing world and fixed beliefs is the source of most persistent life problems. Learning to consciously adapt, to question and update your beliefs, is not optional for high performance. It's the fundamental skill that determines whether you grow or stagnate. Deep dive. Why what worked yesterday won't work tomorrow. Here's a truth that's both liberating and unsettling. The physical world is in constant motion. Everything made of atoms is changing, deteriorating, transforming. The market conditions that made you money last year may not exist anymore. The strategies that worked in your relationships a decade ago may now be creating distance. The skills that built your career may become obsolete. But your mental environment doesn't automatically keep pace. The beliefs you formed from past experiences remain fixed unless you actively update them. Energy doesn't decay. What you learned stays learned, which means what you learned that's no longer true keeps operating as if it's still true. I call this the adaptation imperative. You either learn to consciously adapt your inner world to changing outer conditions, or you experience increasing pain and frustration until you're forced to change. Let me show you what this looks like in trading. A trader develops a strategy that works beautifully in trending markets. He makes good money for months. His mental environment forms a belief. This is how you trade. This is what works. Then the market changes. Volatility drops. The trends become choppy ranges. The strategy stops working. But the trader's belief hasn't updated. So what does he do? He keeps applying the strategy, keeps losing money, and keeps telling himself, the market will come back. This always worked before. I just need to be disciplined and stick with it. His discipline, normally a virtue, becomes the very thing destroying him. Because discipline at doing the wrong thing isn't discipline, it's rigidity. The adaptive trader, by contrast, is constantly monitoring the relationship between his beliefs and the environment. When results don't match expectations, he doesn't just try harder. He questions whether his mental model needs updating. He asks, what has changed? What do I need to learn now that I didn't know before? This adaptability requires something that doesn't come naturally to most people, the willingness to be wrong. To say what I believed was true is no longer true. What I knew how to do isn't working anymore. I need to learn something new. Our culture doesn't teach this well. We're taught that being wrong is shameful, that changing your mind is weakness, that consistency is always a virtue. But in a changing environment, consistency without adaptation is a death sentence. I had to learn this the hard way. After my bankruptcy, I had to admit that everything I thought I knew about trading was either incomplete or wrong. My beliefs about money, about success, about what made markets move, all of it needed examination. It was humbling. But it was also the beginning of actually learning how to trade. The adaptation imperative applies to every domain. The man who learned as a child that expressing emotions was dangerous will struggle in intimate relationships until he updates that belief. The woman who learned that her value depends on being perfect will burn out in demanding careers until she questions that programming. Your negative emotions are actually your best guide here. Frustration, anxiety, disappointment, these aren't just unpleasant feelings to avoid. They're signals. They're telling you that there's a gap between your mental model of how things should be and how things actually are. The pain is information. The question is whether you'll use it to adapt or just try to numb it. When you feel that gap, when results aren't matching expectations, you have two choices. You can try to force the environment to conform to your beliefs. This is what most people do. They get angry at the market. They blame their partner. They complain about unfair circumstances. Or you can update your beliefs. You can get curious. You can ask, what don't I know yet? What distinction am I not making that would change how I see this? The first path leads to stagnation and increasing pain. The second leads to growth and eventually mastery. Key takeaway: the quality of your life depends on the quality of your adaptation. You're either updating your mental models to match reality, or you're suffering the consequences of outdated programming. Reflection prompt: where in your life are you experiencing frustration? What belief about how things should be might need updating? Book 2, The Trader's Mind. Chapter 5, The Market as Mirror. Chapter Summary. Trading is the ultimate psychological crucible because the market reflects your mental state with perfect, unforgiving accuracy. Unlike social environments where others might support your illusions, the market has no interest in protecting your ego. It will show you exactly who you are. Understanding this makes trading not just a path to wealth, but a vehicle for profound self-knowledge. Deep Dive. What the market reveals about you. Let me tell you why trading is different from almost everything else you'll ever do. In normal life, you can maintain illusions about yourself and get away with it. Your friends might support your self-image. Your co-workers might not challenge your beliefs. You can rationalize failures, blame circumstances, and maintain a comfortable story about who you are. The market doesn't play that game. When you trade, your beliefs about yourself and the world translate directly into profits or losses. There's no ambiguity. There's no one to blame. There's no story you can tell that changes the number in your account. The market is a perfect mirror of your psychological state. I've seen brilliant analysts who could predict market moves with astonishing accuracy, but couldn't make money trading. They'd hesitate at the moment of execution. They'd exit winning trades too early. They'd let losses run. All that analytical brilliance meant nothing because their psychological programming wouldn't let them act on what they knew. Other traders I've known aren't particularly sophisticated in their analysis. They use simple methods, but they execute flawlessly. They cut losses quickly without emotional resistance. They let winners run without getting anxious. They consistently make money not because they're smarter, but because their mental environment supports effective action. The market reveals what's really inside you. If you have unresolved fear around being wrong, it will show up in your trading. If you have limiting beliefs about money, they'll manifest in your equity curve. If you don't trust yourself, you'll hesitate at crucial moments. Here's a pattern I've seen countless times with traders. They learn a solid strategy. They paper trade it successfully. Then they go live with real money, and suddenly everything falls apart. They can't pull the trigger. They exit early. They override their own rules. What happened? The strategy didn't change. The market's behavior didn't change. What changed was that real money activated all their stored psychological issues around risk, failure, self-worth, and deserving. These issues were always there, dormant. The market just activated them. This is why I say that trading success is 80% psychological and 20% methodology. It's not that methodology doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But a mediocre methodology executed with psychological mastery will outperform a brilliant methodology executed with psychological chaos. The market also reveals something else: your relationship with uncertainty. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with the unknown. They want guarantees. They want to be right. They want to control outcomes. The market offers none of these. When you enter a trade, you have no guarantee of the outcome. You can analyze probabilities. You can have a solid edge. But any individual trade could still lose. The market doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care about your analysis, your effort, or your need to be right. Accepting this, truly accepting it at a gut level, is transformative. It frees you from the need to be right on any individual trade. You can take a loss without it threatening your identity because you understand that losses are part of the probability game. You're not attaching your self-worth to each outcome. I learned this through painful experience. Before my bankruptcy, every losing trade felt like a personal indictment. Being wrong meant something was wrong with me, so I couldn't accept losses. I'd hold losing positions, hoping they'd turn around, because closing the trade would mean admitting failure. After losing everything, I discovered something remarkable. Being wrong didn't kill me. Losing money didn't diminish who I was. The things I feared most had happened, and I was still here. That experience fundamentally rewired my relationship with uncertainty and loss. Once I stopped fearing being wrong, I could see what the market was actually doing. My perception expanded. I noticed patterns I'd been blind to. Trading became almost effortless, not because the market changed, but because I had changed. Key takeaway: the market doesn't create your psychological issues, it reveals them. Every trading problem is ultimately a self-knowledge problem. Master yourself and the market becomes manageable. Reflection prompt. If your trading or decision-making results were a mirror of your inner state, what would they be showing you right now? Chapter 6. The Unlimited Environment. Chapter Summary. Trading presents unique psychological challenges because it operates without the external structures and limits that govern normal life. There's unlimited potential for profit and loss in every trade. There's no defined beginning or ending except what you create. Understanding how to function in an unstructured, unlimited environment is essential for survival, and the skills you develop transfer to every area of life. Deep dive: why freedom can be terrifying. Most of us grew up in highly structured environments. School had bells telling you when to move. Parents had rules about what you could and couldn't do. Jobs have defined hours, clear responsibilities, bosses telling you what to do. Society has laws, norms, expectations. We're so accustomed to external structure that we rarely notice how much it shapes our behavior. We rely on external limits to keep us in check. We depend on external validation to feel good about ourselves. We look to others for direction when we're uncertain. Then you enter the trading environment, and all that structure disappears. There's no boss telling you when to work, no defined tasks to complete, no guaranteed paycheck for showing up. You can trade whenever you want, however you want, with whatever size you want. You can make decisions that create windfall profits in minutes, or you can sit and do nothing. The freedom is absolute. And for most people, this freedom is terrifying. Because here's what unlimited freedom reveals. If there's no external structure, you have to create your own. If there's no one telling you what to do, you have to know what to do yourself. If there's no external validation, your self-worth has to come from within. Most traders aren't prepared for this. They come from structured environments where success meant following the rules and working hard. They assume trading will be similar. Then they discover that you can work incredibly hard at trading and still lose money. You can follow all the conventional wisdom and still fail. There's no direct correlation between effort and reward. This breaks people's mental models. It creates enormous psychological stress, and in that stress, their deepest fears activate. Let me contrast trading with gambling to show you something important. In gambling, you decide how much to risk before each event. The event has a defined beginning and end. When it's over, you know exactly what you won or lost. If you want to risk more, you have to actively decide to do so. The structure of the game prevents passive losses. Trading is fundamentally different. Once you enter a position, you don't need to do anything to keep losing. The market can keep moving against you indefinitely. You have to actively decide to exit to stop the loss. And because the market is always moving, always offering the possibility of coming back, the temptation to hold and hope is constant. This is why cutting losses is so psychologically difficult. It requires you to actively accept a loss, to admit you were wrong, to experience the pain of failure, to let go of hope. Doing nothing is easier. Holding and hoping provides temporary emotional relief, even as the financial damage compounds. I've watched traders lose everything because they couldn't make themselves exit a losing trade. They weren't stupid. They weren't even necessarily undisciplined in other areas of life. But in the unlimited environment of trading, their psychological vulnerabilities around loss and failure overwhelmed their rational decision-making. The solution is to create your own structure. This is what successful traders do. They create explicit rules about when to enter, when to exit, how much to risk. They don't rely on willpower in the heat of the moment. They've pre-committed to specific actions under specific conditions. But here's the catch. Creating rules means you're accountable to yourself. If you follow your rules and lose, you can't blame anyone else. If you break your rules and lose, you have to confront your own lack of discipline. Many traders avoid creating clear rules precisely because rules create accountability. They'd rather keep things vague, maintaining the illusion that they could succeed if they just figured out the right secret. This resistance to structure and accountability is one of the biggest reasons traders fail. They want the freedom of trading without the responsibility that freedom requires. Key takeaway: in an unlimited environment, structure is survival. You either create your own rules and follow them, or you'll be swept along by impulse and emotion until you lose everything. Reflection prompt. Where in your life have you been avoiding creating clear rules or commitments because deep down you don't want to be accountable for the results? Chapter 7. The Psychology of Price. Chapter Summary. Price movement isn't just numbers on a screen, it's a real-time representation of human psychology playing out on a mass scale. Understanding the emotional dynamics behind market behavior gives you predictive power. More importantly, understanding these dynamics in others requires first understanding them in yourself. As you master your own psychology, you gain insight into the collective psychology moving markets. Deep dive: fear, greed, and the mass mind. Let me explain what's actually happening behind every tick of price movement. At its core, a market is just two traders agreeing on a price. One wants to buy, believing the price will go up. One wants to sell, believing the price will go down. They disagree about the future, so they can agree on a trade in the present. Every price on your screen represents a moment where conviction met conviction. Someone was willing to pay that price. Someone was willing to sell at that price. Both believed they were getting the better end of the deal. Now multiply this by thousands of participants, each with their own beliefs, fears, time horizons, and financial situations. The resulting movement is a collective expression of human psychology. When prices are rising, it means buyers are more aggressive than sellers. They're willing to pay higher and higher prices, either because they believe the value justifies it or because they're afraid of missing out. The rising price attracts more buyers, including those who sold earlier at lower prices and now feel pain watching the market move without them. Their pain eventually forces them to buy back at higher prices, adding fuel to the rise. When prices are falling, it means sellers are more aggressive. They're willing to accept lower and lower prices, either because they believe the value is declining or because they're afraid of losing more. The falling price eventually triggers panic among buyers who are underwater, forcing them to sell at any price to escape the pain. This is the engine of all market movement, traders acting to either pursue pleasure or escape pain. The fear of missing out drives chasing behavior. The fear of losing more drives panic selling. Greed drives holding too long. Hope drives denial of losses. But here's what makes markets predictable. Human responses to fear and greed follow patterns. When you understand how the typical trader responds to being underwater on a position, you can anticipate where they'll capitulate. When you understand how the typical trader responds to watching a move they missed, you can anticipate where they'll chase. Significant reference points, support and resistance levels, previous highs and lows, round numbers, derive their power from these shared psychological responses. A previous high becomes significant because traders who bought at that high and watched the market fall are sitting on losses. They're hoping the market comes back so they can get out even. When it does come back to that level, they sell in relief, creating resistance. The sellers who shorted at that high and made money are emboldened to short again at the same level. Their collective action makes the level significant. Old resistance becomes support when enough traders who sold at that level, watched the market break through, suffered losses, and finally capitulated, are replaced by new buyers who see the breakout as confirmation. The traders who would have sold at that level are gone. They've already been washed out. So, when the market pulls back to that level, there aren't enough sellers to push it lower, and buyers step in. All of this is predictable if you understand the underlying psychology, and you can only understand it in others to the degree you understand it in yourself. When you've experienced the urge to hold a losing trade and hope, you recognize it in collective market behavior. When you've felt the fear of missing a big move, you recognize it in the herd. Your own psychological work isn't just therapeutic, it's analytical training. Every fear you overcome in yourself gives you insight into the fears driving the market. This is why the best traders often describe trading as a process of self-discovery. As you gain objectivity about your own reactions, you gain objectivity about the market. You stop imposing your hopes and fears onto price action and start seeing what's actually there. Key takeaway: the market is a collection of humans acting on fear and greed. Master these forces in yourself, and you'll see them clearly in the market. What was confusing becomes predictable. Reflection prompt. Think of a recent decision you made based on fear or greed. If you had been observing yourself from the outside, what would you have seen? Chapter 8. States of Mind and Trading Performance. Chapter Summary. Your psychological state directly determines the quality of your decisions. Understanding the relationship between physical arousal, emotional state, and cognitive function is essential for consistent performance. We'll explore practical tools for managing your state, including biofeedback, meditation, and self-hypnosis that allow you to access optimal performance on demand. Deep Dive. Engineering your mental state. Let me tell you about something that revolutionized my understanding of trading performance. When I first started working with traders using biofeedback equipment, I noticed a consistent pattern. Inexperienced traders would show elevated heart rate, increased muscle tension, and shallow breathing long before they consciously realized a trade was going against them. Their bodies knew they were in trouble before their minds acknowledged it. By the time they consciously recognized the threat, they were already in full fight or flight mode. Blood flow had shifted away from their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and planning, toward their motor centers. They were literally out of their minds in a physiological sense. Experienced, successful traders showed a completely different pattern. When positions moved against them, they maintained physiological calm. Their heart rate variability stayed in a coherent pattern. They remained in a state where their prefrontal cortex could function optimally. They could think clearly under pressure because they'd trained themselves to stay in that state. This is one of the most underappreciated aspects of performance psychology. Your body's state determines your mind's capabilities. You can't think clearly when you're in fight or flight mode. You can't access your training and planning when your physiology is screaming emergency. The good news is that this works both ways. Just as stress can hijack your body and impair your mind, you can use your body to calm your mind. Deep, slow breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Relaxing tense muscles signals safety to your brain. These physical interventions create the conditions for clear thinking. This is where practices like meditation, biofeedback training, and self-hypnosis become not just wellness activities but performance tools. Regular meditation practice builds your capacity to maintain calm focus under pressure. Biofeedback gives you real-time awareness of your physiological state so you can catch stress early and intervene. Self-hypnosis allows you to program specific responses to triggering situations. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. I developed a simple self-hypnosis routine for traders. You sit comfortably, focus on your hands in front of you, and tell yourself that magnets are slowly pulling them together. As your hands move closer, you deepen your relaxation and focus. When your hands touch, you've programmed yourself to enter a state of calm concentration. With practice, you can trigger this state on demand, even in the middle of a fast-moving market, simply by bringing your hands together. The key insight here is that optimal performance states aren't random. They're not something that just happens when conditions are right. They can be engineered. They can be trained. You can build the capacity to access your best self when it matters most. This applies far beyond trading. Any performance situation, a difficult conversation, a presentation, an athletic competition, benefits from state management. The person who can maintain composure under pressure has an enormous advantage over the person who falls apart. Key takeaway: your psychological state is not a given, it's a skill. Train your ability to access calm, focused awareness on demand, and you'll make better decisions in every domain of life. Reflection prompt: what's one situation where your emotional state has impaired your decision making? What physical signals tell you you're getting dysregulated? Chapter 9. The Discipline Paradox. Chapter Summary. Traditional advice emphasizes discipline as the key to success, but discipline at doing the wrong thing is worse than useless. The higher form of discipline is the discipline to adapt, to question your own assumptions, to abandon what's no longer working, to continuously update your mental models. This chapter explores why rigid discipline fails and flexible commitment succeeds. Deep Dive. When rules become prisons. Let me challenge one of the most sacred ideas in trading and performance psychology, the supremacy of discipline. Don't get me wrong, discipline matters. The ability to follow your rules, to execute consistently, to do what you said you would do, these are important capacities. Without them, you're at the mercy of impulse and emotion. But here's the problem. Discipline only helps if you're doing the right things. Discipline at executing a flawed strategy just ensures you lose money consistently rather than randomly. Discipline at following outdated beliefs just guarantees you keep making the same mistakes. I've encountered traders who prided themselves on their discipline while their accounts slowly bled to death. They followed their rules perfectly. They never deviated from their system. They just couldn't see that their system no longer worked because market conditions had fundamentally changed. The market had evolved. New participants had entered. Algorithmic trading had altered price dynamics. Volatility patterns had shifted. But these traders' mental models hadn't updated. Their discipline kept them locked into behaviors that had become counterproductive. What they needed wasn't more discipline. What they needed was adaptive flexibility. The willingness to question their assumptions, to experiment with new approaches, to be wrong, and learn from it. This is the discipline paradox. At lower levels of development, you need rules and structure to contain your impulses. But at higher levels, that same structure can become a cage that prevents growth. The discipline that served you at one stage becomes the rigidity that limits you at the next. The solution isn't to abandon discipline. It's to evolve to a higher form of it. First, order discipline is following your rules consistently. Second, order discipline is consistently examining and updating your rules. First, order discipline keeps you on the path. Second, order discipline ensures the path is still heading where you want to go. This requires something that doesn't come naturally: comfort with being wrong. If you're going to update your mental models, you have to acknowledge that your current models are incomplete or incorrect. For many people, especially those who've built identities around being right or being experts, this is excruciating. I've worked with portfolio managers who couldn't adapt because their entire self-concept was built around being the smartest person in the room. Admitting they needed to learn something new felt like admitting weakness. So they kept doing what had worked in the past, long after it stopped working, because changing would threaten their identity. The traders who sustain long-term success have a different relationship with being wrong. They expect to be wrong a certain percentage of the time. It's built into their models. A losing trade doesn't threaten their identity, it's just data. They're wrong, they learn, they adjust, they move on. No ego involvement. This flexibility extends to their entire approach. They don't identify as a trend follower or a value investor in a way that limits their perception. They're opportunity seekers who use whatever tools suit the current environment. Their commitment isn't to a particular methodology, it's to continuous learning and adaptation. Key takeaway: true discipline isn't rigid adherence to rules. It's the discipline to know when your rules need to change, and the courage to change them. Reflection prompt: what rules or approaches in your life might have served you well in the past but are now limiting your growth? Chapter 10: the role of creativity in performance. Chapter summary: creativity isn't just for artists. It's the engine of adaptation, the source of competitive advantage, and the key to sustained success in any changing environment. Understanding the creative process, preparation, incubation, insight, verification, gives you a framework for generating fresh solutions to persistent problems. This chapter explores how to cultivate creativity as a deliberate practice. Deep dive: building your idea factory. Here's something that might surprise you. The most successful traders I've known are fundamentally creative people. They don't just execute strategies, they invent them. They see patterns others miss. They combine information in novel ways. They're constantly experimenting, exploring, generating fresh perspectives. This isn't a coincidence. In a competitive, ever-changing environment like financial markets, creativity is the ultimate edge, because any fixed strategy eventually gets discovered, copied, and arbitraged away. The only sustainable advantage is the ability to generate new advantages faster than they're commoditized. So what is creativity, actually? And can it be developed? The research on creative thinking reveals a consistent pattern. Creativity follows a process with identifiable stages. First comes preparation. You immerse yourself in a domain. You gather raw materials, data, observations, conversations, reading. You develop deep expertise. Creativity doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from having a rich database of information to draw from and recombine. Second comes incubation. You step back from conscious problem solving. You let your mind wander. You work on other things. During this phase, your unconscious mind is processing the information you've gathered, making connections that your conscious mind would filter out. Then comes insight, the aha moment when a new connection becomes conscious. This often happens when you're not actively trying to solve the problem, in the shower, on a walk, during exercise. The preparation and incubation phases have done their work and the insight emerges. Finally comes verification. You test the insight. You see if it actually works. You refine it. Not every insight is valid. The creative process includes rigorous evaluation. Most traders skip the incubation phase entirely. They gather information and immediately try to trade on it. They don't give their minds time to synthesize. They're constantly in analysis mode, never in synthesis mode. I learned to build incubation into my process. After intensive research and market observation, I step away. I exercise. I listen to music. I let the information marinate. Invariably, insights emerge during these periods of non-focus that never would have come through forcing. Here's another key to creativity that most people miss: productivity. Dean Keith Simonton's research on genius found that the most creative people aren't necessarily those with the highest hit rate. They're the ones who generate the most ideas. They produce constantly. Most of their ideas aren't great, but because they produce so many, they inevitably produce some that are brilliant. This has practical implications. If you want to be more creative, generate more ideas. Don't filter too early. Don't judge ideas as they emerge. Just produce. You can evaluate later. Quantity leads to quality over time. I implemented this in my own work by setting quotas. I committed to writing one substantial blog post every day for years. Most posts were decent, but not remarkable. Some were genuinely insightful. The daily quota forced me to constantly find new angles, explore new research, connect disparate ideas. The practice of producing consistently built the creative muscle. Creativity also benefits from cross-pollination. When you expose yourself to diverse fields, reading outside your domain, talking to people with different expertise, exploring unfamiliar territory, you gain new mental models that can be applied to your primary field. The best trading ideas I've had often came from connections between market behavior and concepts from psychology, physics, or biology. Key takeaway: creativity is a process, not a talent. Prepare deeply, incubate regularly, capture insights as they emerge, and verify rigorously. The more ideas you generate, the more likely you are to find gold. Reflection prompt: where in your life have you been stuck in analysis without allowing for incubation? How might you build incubation time into your routine? Chapter 11. Building your trading business. Chapter summary: successful trading isn't just about making good trades. It's about running a business. This chapter breaks down the essential functions of a trading business: research, idea generation, execution, risk management, self-management, and performance review, and explains how to develop robust processes for each. Whether you're an independent trader or working within a firm, thinking like a business owner transforms your approach. Deep dive: the 7 functions of trading excellence. Most people think of trading as a single activity, making bets on market direction. But successful trading requires mastery of multiple distinct functions. If any one of them is neglected, the entire enterprise suffers. Let me break down the 7 essential functions of a trading business. First is research. This is the gathering of raw material, economic data, market statistics, news flow, intermarket relationships, sentiment indicators. Research is about building a rich information base from which trading ideas can emerge. Without systematic research, you're operating on impressions and hearsay. I learned this lesson through painful experience. When I first started trading, I didn't have a research process. I'd look at charts, read some news, talk to some people, and trade based on whatever felt right. Sometimes it worked, often it didn't. I had no way of knowing why some trades succeeded and others failed, because I wasn't tracking the inputs systematically. Now my research process is structured and consistent. Each day I update spreadsheets tracking dozens of market indicators. I read curated sources of market analysis. I speak with knowledgeable colleagues. This consistent input creates the foundation for everything else. Second is idea generation. This is the synthesis of research into specific trade ideas. It's where creativity meets analysis. Good idea generation requires both immersion in the data and the ability to step back and see patterns. Many traders skip from research directly to trading, never formally generating ideas. They absorb information and then react to market movements without a clear thesis. This reactive approach almost always leads to poor decisions. Third is trade structuring. Once you have an idea, you need to express it in a way that maximizes reward relative to risk. This involves choosing the right instrument, determining position size, setting stop levels, and establishing profit targets. A good idea can become a bad trade if structured poorly. Fourth is position and risk management. This is the ongoing monitoring and adjustment of open positions. It includes knowing when to add size, when to reduce, when to take partial profits, and when to exit entirely. Position management is where many traders' psychological issues surface most clearly. Fifth is portfolio management. If you have multiple positions, you need to understand how they interact. Are your positions correlated in ways that create hidden concentration risk? Are you diversified across different strategies and timeframes? Portfolio-level thinking prevents catastrophic losses from correlated bets. Sixth is self-management. This encompasses everything related to maintaining your personal performance capacity, physical health, emotional state, cognitive function, energy management. You can have brilliant ideas and flawless execution plans, but if you're exhausted, distracted, or emotionally dysregulated, none of it matters. Seventh is performance review. This is the systematic examination of your trading results to identify strengths to build on and weaknesses to address. Without performance review, you can't learn. You'll keep making the same mistakes because you never formally identify them. Here's what's crucial. These functions shouldn't be mixed together. You can't effectively research while you're managing positions. You can't objectively review performance while you're emotionally involved in trading. Each function needs its own dedicated time and attention. I structure my days around this separation. Research and idea generation happen during specific blocks when markets are closed or during designated periods. Position management has its own protocols. Performance review happens on a weekly and monthly schedule. By keeping these functions separate, I can give each the focus it deserves. Key takeaway: trading is a business with multiple essential functions. Excellence requires developing robust processes for each function and keeping them appropriately separated. Reflection prompt: which of the 7 trading functions are you strongest in? Which are you weakest? What would happen if you devoted focused attention to your weakest area? Book 3, The Man's Mind. Chapter 12, The Polarized Reality. Chapter Summary. Masculine and feminine energies are fundamentally different. Complementary opposites that create attraction when each is fully expressed. Understanding this polarity and learning to embody your masculine core without apology is the foundation of authentic connection with women. This isn't about manipulation or dominance. It's about understanding what each energy craves from the other and having the courage to provide it. Deep dive. The dance of opposites. Let me share an insight that transformed my understanding of male-female dynamics. Masculine energy at its purest form is grounded emptiness. It's the calm center that observes without being swept away. It's direction, purpose, presence. It's the rock that doesn't move regardless of the emotional weather around it. Feminine energy at its purest form is motion and emotion. It's the flowing river, the changing weather, the vibrant expression of feeling. It's life in its fullness, joy and sorrow, excitement and fear, love and anger. These energies aren't about gender. Both men and women have both energies within them. But in romantic and sexual dynamics, polarity creates attraction. When a man is fully in his masculine and a woman is fully in her feminine, there's a natural magnetic pull. The problem in modern culture is that these energies have become confused. Men have been taught to suppress their masculine edge, to be nice, To avoid being threatening? To prioritize harmony over direction. Women have been taught to be independent to the point of not needing masculine presence, to lead rather than receive, to be in control rather than surrender to the moment. The result is a lot of flat, passionless interactions where neither person feels truly alive. I'm not advocating for some cartoon version of masculinity, the chest-pounding, domineering, emotionally stunted caricature. That's not authentic masculinity. It's insecurity wearing a mask. Authentic masculine presence is calm, grounded, and unapologetic about its desires and direction. Here's what this looks like in practice. When a man approaches a woman he's attracted to, the old nice guy approach is to try to impress her, to seek her approval, to hope she likes him. This is fundamentally supplicating behavior. It puts her in the position of judge and him in the position of needing validation. The masculine approach is different. He approaches because he's genuinely attracted. He shares his interest without needing a particular response. He's offering his presence, not asking for permission. If she's receptive, great. If not, that's fine too. His self-worth isn't dependent on her reaction. This isn't about being arrogant or dismissive. It's about being centered in yourself. When you're not looking to her for validation, you can actually see her. You can be present with her experience rather than performing for her approval. Women respond to this at a deep, often unconscious level. Because here's what most men don't understand. Attraction isn't a choice. It's an emotional and physiological response to masculine presence. A woman doesn't decide to be attracted to you. She feels attracted when you embody qualities that trigger that response. What are those qualities? Presence, calmness under pressure, the ability to lead without needing approval, unapologetic desire, emotional groundedness, the capacity to generate and hold sexual tension without becoming uncomfortable. Notice that none of these require being handsome, rich, or having high status. They're qualities of being, not having. Most men don't, though, because they're too busy trying to impress women with their achievements and possessions rather than developing their internal state. Let me give you a concrete example. A man sees an attractive woman. The nice guy response is anxiety. What should I say? What if she rejects me? How can I get her to like me? He approaches with tension, neediness, and performance pressure. She feels this immediately and usually rejects him, not because of anything about him, but because his energy is unattractive. The masculine man sees the same woman and feels desire. He's not anxious because he's not looking for validation. He's just interested. He approaches not to impress, but to express. To share his interest and see if there's a connection. His energy is relaxed, confident, present. She feels this too, and often responds with openness. The difference isn't in what he says or does, it's in his internal state. And that internal state is a function of his beliefs about himself, about women, about rejection, about his own worth. This is why psychological work is so essential for men who want to improve their relationships with women. You can't fake confidence. You can't fake not needing approval. Either you've done the work to build genuine self-worth, or you haven't. And women will sense the difference within seconds of meeting you. Key takeaway. Authentic masculine presence isn't about dominance or aggression. It's about being grounded in yourself, unapologetic about your desires, and free from the need for external validation. When you embody this, attraction happens naturally. Reflection prompt. In your interactions with women you're attracted to, are you typically seeking approval or expressing genuine interest? What would change if you shifted from seeking to offering? Chapter 13. Breaking the nice guy pattern. Chapter summary. Many men operate from a nice guy conditioning that prioritizes being liked over being authentic. This pattern stems from childhood adaptation but creates adult frustration. Breaking free requires understanding the roots of the pattern, developing genuine self-worth independent of female approval, and learning to express desire without apology. This chapter provides the framework for that transformation. Deep dive, the prison of people, pleasing. Let me tell you about a pattern I see everywhere, in men of all ages and backgrounds. The nice guy pattern starts early. A boy learns that expressing certain emotions, anger, assertiveness, strong desire, gets him punished or rejected. He learns that being agreeable, accommodating, and good earns him approval. His natural masculine edge gets suppressed in exchange for social acceptance. This adaptation makes sense in childhood. When you're dependent on adults for survival, fitting in is adaptive. The problem is that many men carry this pattern into adulthood, where it becomes profoundly counterproductive. The adult nice guy believes, usually unconsciously, that if he's nice enough, accommodating enough, emotionally attuned enough, women will reward him with affection and sex. He puts women on pedestals. He prioritizes their comfort over his own needs. He hides his sexual desire because expressing it feels threatening, both to her and to his self-image as a good guy. And then he's mystified when women tell him he's such a great guy, but aren't sexually attracted to him. He's doing everything right according to his programming, and yet getting the opposite of what he wants. What he doesn't understand is that his niceness isn't actually nice. It's manipulative. It's a covert contract. I'll give you attention, emotional support, and never challenge you, and in return you'll give me sex and validation. The contract is never stated, but it's there in the subtext of every interaction. Women feel this. They may not articulate it, but they feel the underlying neediness, the hidden agenda, the lack of authentic presence, and it dries up attraction completely. Breaking the nice guy pattern requires several shifts. First, you have to recognize that your worth isn't determined by women's approval. This seems obvious intellectually, but runs deep emotionally. Many men's self-esteem is contingent on female validation. When they're rejected, they feel worthless. When they're accepted, they feel valuable. This dependency is the root of neediness. Building genuine self-worth means developing sources of validation that don't depend on women. Your accomplishments, your character, your values, your relationships with other men, your relationship with yourself. When your sense of worth comes from within, rejection doesn't devastate you. It's just information. This person wasn't interested, which is fine. Second, you have to own your desires. Men are taught that sexual desire is somehow predatory or inappropriate, so they hide it. They pretend they're interested in friendship when they want more. This dishonesty is corrosive. It disrespects both yourself and her. Owning your desire means being willing to express interest clearly, without apology, while respecting her response. If she's not interested, you accept that gracefully. But you don't pretend you weren't interested to save face. Third, you have to develop the capacity to lead. The nice guy pattern involves constantly deferring to her preferences, where to eat, what to do, how to spend time. He thinks this makes him considerate. It actually makes him exhausting to be around because she has to make all the decisions. Leadership means having opinions, making suggestions, taking initiative. It doesn't mean being domineering or ignoring her preferences. It means being decisive and allowing her to relax into your direction when she chooses to. Most women find this deeply attractive because it's so rare. Fourth, you have to be willing to risk conflict. The nice guy avoids disagreement at all costs. He suppresses his own opinions if they might cause tension. This isn't harmony, it's cowardice. Authentic relationships involve friction. Disagreeing respectfully, standing your ground and working through conflict actually builds intimacy and respect. Key takeaway. The nice guy pattern is based on a covert contract that women can sense and find unattractive. Breaking free means building genuine self-worth, owning your desires, developing leadership, and accepting that conflict is part of authentic relationships. Reflection prompt. In what ways do you seek approval or avoid conflict in your relationships? What would change if you prioritized authenticity over being liked? Chapter 14, The Art of Presence. Chapter summary. Presence, the ability to be fully in the moment without distraction or agenda, is one of the most attractive qualities a man can cultivate. It signals confidence, groundedness, and the capacity to truly connect. This chapter explores what presence is, why it's so powerful, and how to develop it as a cultivated skill. Deep dive, the power of being here now. Let me tell you about the single most attractive quality a man can develop. It's not looks, it's not money, it's not status or game or any technique, it's presence. Presence is the ability to be fully here, now without distraction, to give someone your complete attention, to be so grounded in yourself that you're not performing, not calculating, not trying to impress. You're just here, available, real. When you're present with a woman, she feels it immediately. In a world of constant distraction, phones buzzing, minds wandering, people half listening while formulating their next response, someone who is genuinely present is magnetic. It signals that you're confident enough to give your full attention. It signals that she's worth your focus. It creates a bubble where real connection can happen. Most men can't do this. They're too busy trying to be impressive. They're running scripts in their heads. They're monitoring her reactions to adjust their performance. They're worried about saying the wrong thing. Their attention is everywhere except on her. This is fundamentally unappealing. Women can feel when you're not really there. They can feel the agenda behind your words. They can sense that you're trying to get something rather than simply being with them. Developing presence requires training your attention. It's a skill, not a personality trait. And like any skill, it can be practiced. Meditation is the most direct practice. Sitting still, focusing on your breath, noticing when your mind wanders and gently bringing it back. This builds the capacity for sustained attention. 15 minutes a day of consistent practice transforms your ability to be present in conversations. But presence isn't just about focus. It's also about being comfortable with silence and tension. Most men fill every pause with nervous chatter. They can't handle the space between words, so they fill it, often with nonsense that dilutes any connection that might have formed. Learning to be comfortable with silence, to let it breathe, to let anticipation build, to let her fill the space sometimes. This is a game changer. Silence creates tension. Tension creates intrigue. Intrigue creates attraction. Here's a practical approach to developing presence in your interactions. Before you approach someone, take a breath and ground yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your body. Let go of any agenda about the outcome. Your only job is to be present and express genuine interest. Whatever happens after that is fine. When you're in conversation, practice actually listening. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, not formulating your clever response, actually receiving what she's saying. If your mind wanders, bring it back. If you notice yourself performing, let go of the performance. This level of presence is rare. Most people go their whole lives without being truly seen or heard by anyone. When you offer that to someone, they'll remember you. They'll want more of you. Because you're giving them something almost no one else does, the experience of mattering. Key takeaway: presence is the foundation of genuine connection. It's cultivated through practice, not personality. When you learn to be fully present with someone, you offer them a rare gift, and they'll respond accordingly. Reflection prompt. In your recent interactions with people you care about, how present were you? What would change if you gave them your full, undistracted attention? Chapter 15, Love and the Feminine. Chapter summary. Genuine love for women, not neediness or pedestalization, but genuine appreciation of the feminine, is transformative in relationships. This chapter distinguishes between healthy appreciation and unhealthy attachment, exploring how a man who truly celebrates women relates to them differently than one who's either resentful or desperate. Deep dive. From taking to giving. Let me ask you a question that cuts to the heart of your relationship with women. Do you actually love women? Not do you want them. Not are you attracted to them. Not do you need their approval or validation. Do you genuinely, deeply appreciate the feminine in all its expressions? Most men would say yes without hesitation. But their behavior tells a different story. They approach women with an agenda, to get sex, to get validation, to not feel alone. They're taking, not giving. They're coming from a place of lack, not abundance. A man who genuinely loves women doesn't need anything from them. He doesn't approach with a covert contract. He approaches because he's genuinely interested in her energy, her perspective, her presence. He wants to share something, not extract something. This shift from taking to giving transforms every interaction. When you're taking, you're anxious. You're monitoring her reactions. You're trying to say the right thing to get the outcome you want. Your focus is on yourself, how you're doing, whether you're succeeding, whether she likes you. When you're giving, you're relaxed. You're not attached to any particular outcome. You're simply offering your attention, your humor, your genuine interest. Your focus is on her, what she's experiencing, what she's expressing, who she is beyond the surface. This giving orientation comes from abundance. It comes from knowing that your needs are already met, that you're not desperate for anything from her, that her response doesn't determine your worth. When you're full, you can give freely. When you're empty, you're always trying to fill yourself from others. Developing genuine love for women means appreciating the feminine in all its forms, not just the sexually attractive ones. It means enjoying women's company without sexual agenda. It means celebrating feminine qualities, emotional expressiveness, nurturing, receptivity, aesthetic sensitivity, rather than dismissing them as weakness. Many men have suppressed their appreciation for the feminine because they were hurt by women in the past. A mother who was cold or critical, a first love who rejected them, a partner who betrayed them. These wounds create defensiveness, a wall against the feminine that keeps them safe, but also keeps them alone. Healing these wounds requires acknowledging the pain without letting it define your relationship with all women. The woman who hurt you is one person, not all women. Holding on to resentment as protection only ensures you'll never experience the connection you crave. The man who genuinely loves women is magnetic to them, not because he's trying to be, but because women can feel the difference between being genuinely appreciated and being targeted. When you approach from genuine appreciation, without agenda, you're offering something rare. Most men want something from women. You're offering something to them. That difference is everything. Key takeaway: genuine love for the feminine, appreciation without agenda, giving without needing, transforms how you relate to women. It shifts you from anxious taking to confident offering, and women feel that shift immediately. Reflection prompt: when you approach someone you're attracted to, what's your primary motivation, to get something or to share something? How might shifting to a giving orientation change your experience? Book 4, The Disciplined Life. Chapter 16, The 3 Stages of Mastery. Chapter summary: becoming a successful trader or mastering any complex skill proceeds through 3 stages. First, you learn to perceive opportunity by developing distinctions. Second, you learn to execute without hesitation. Third, you learn to accumulate, to allow your success to compound rather than sabotaging it. Each stage presents unique psychological challenges that must be addressed before progressing to the next. Deep dive: perception, execution, accumulation. Let me lay out the developmental path of mastery in any complex domain, using trading as our primary example. The first stage is learning to perceive. Before you can act effectively, you need to be able to see what's actually happening. This requires developing distinctions, learning to differentiate between signal and noise, between high-probability setups and random movement, between genuine opportunity and wishful thinking. Most developing traders rush past this stage. They want to make money immediately, so they start trading before they can reliably perceive opportunity. They're essentially gambling, not trading. They might get lucky for a while, but eventually the lack of perceptual skill catches up with them. Developing perception requires patient observation, studying charts, tracking indicators, noticing patterns, testing hypotheses, building a mental database of market behavior across different conditions. This is tedious work that most people skip, but it's the foundation everything else rests on. I spent 2 years just printing out charts and studying them before I traded seriously. Every evening, I'd review the day's price action across multiple time frames. I'd note what happened at key levels. I'd track how different indicators behaved at turning points. Gradually, patterns emerged. I was building the perceptual framework that would later allow me to see opportunity in real time. The second stage is learning to execute. This is where most traders get stuck. They can see the opportunity, they know what they should do, but when the moment comes, they freeze. They hesitate. They talk themselves out of it. Or they jump in too early, too late, with too much size or too little. Execution problems are almost always psychological. Something in the trader's mental environment is creating resistance to acting. Fear of being wrong, fear of losing money, fear of missing out. Perfectionism that makes any trade feel insufficient. Conflicting beliefs about deserving success. Overcoming execution problems requires both psychological work and behavioral practice. You have to identify and release the specific fears creating resistance. And you have to practice executing, starting with small, low-stakes situations and gradually building capacity. This is where having clear rules becomes essential. When you've defined exactly what conditions constitute a trade and exactly what size to trade, the decision becomes mechanical. You don't have to decide in the moment, you just have to follow your rules. The rules bypass the psychological resistance, but following rules requires trust. You have to trust that your rules will work over time. You have to trust yourself to follow them consistently. Building this trust takes repetition, following your rules through winning streaks and losing streaks until following them becomes automatic. The third stage is accumulation. This is the subtlest and most often overlooked. Once you can perceive opportunity and execute consistently, you still have to allow yourself to succeed. You have to let your profits accumulate rather than finding creative ways to give them back. This is where beliefs about self-worth and deserving come into play. Many traders hit an invisible ceiling. They make money up to a certain point, then sabotage themselves back down. They repeat this cycle indefinitely because they never address the underlying belief that they don't deserve to have that much. Your net self-worth, the balance between your positive self-beliefs and your negative ones, determines what you'll allow yourself to receive. If deep down you believe you're not worthy of abundance, you'll find ways to align your results with that belief, regardless of your conscious intentions. The work of accumulation is the work of expanding your capacity to receive. This means identifying and releasing limiting beliefs about money, success, and self-worth. It means becoming comfortable with success rather than anxious about maintaining it. It means allowing your results to exceed your historical norms without feeling like an imposter. Key takeaway: mastery proceeds through 3 stages: perceiving opportunity, executing consistently, and allowing accumulation. Each stage has distinct challenges, and skipping any stage guarantees failure at the next. Reflection prompt: what stage of mastery are you currently in within your primary domain? What's the specific challenge keeping you from progressing to the next level? Chapter 17, The Solution, Focused Approach. Chapter summary: traditional approaches to personal change focus on problems, understanding their origins, analyzing their patterns, working through them. Solution-focused change takes the opposite approach, identifying what's already working and doing more of it. This chapter explains why focusing on solutions is more effective than focusing on problems, and provides practical tools for implementing this approach in your own development. Deep dive: building on what's already working. Here's a counterintuitive truth about personal change: the more you focus on your problems, the more entrenched they become. Traditional psychology and coaching often operate on the assumption that you need to understand your problems deeply before you can resolve them. You need to trace them to their origins. You need to analyze their patterns. You need to work through them systematically. There's value in understanding, but there's also a trap. When you're constantly focused on what's wrong with you, you reinforce the identity of being broken or deficient. Your attention keeps going to your weaknesses, your failures, your shortcomings, and what you focus on grows. The solution-focused approach turns this around. Instead of asking, "What's wrong and how do I fix it?" it asks, "What's already working and how do I do more of it?" Here's why this is powerful. Even in your worst periods, there are exceptions. There are moments when the problem doesn't occur. There are trades you executed well. There are interactions where you showed up as your best self. These exceptions contain the seeds of the solution. When you study these exceptions, when you figure out what was different about the times you succeeded, you discover that you already have the solution within you. You don't need to become a different person. You need to do more of what you're already doing when you're at your best. I use this approach constantly in my work with traders. When a trader is struggling, I don't start by analyzing his losing trades. I start by examining his winning trades. What was he doing differently? What was his state of mind? What was his preparation? What was his decision-making process? Inevitably, we find that even during slumps, the trader has winning trades. He's still capable of excellence. The problem isn't that he's lost the ability. The problem is that he's not consistently accessing the state and process that produces winning trades. This reframe is itself therapeutic. When a struggling trader realizes he's not broken, that he still has the capacity for success, that the solution is already within him, his whole energy shifts. He moves from discouraged to hopeful, from passive to active, from victim to agent. The exercise I often give traders is simple but powerful. Spend a week tracking only your best moments. Every time you execute well, every time you follow your process, every time you make a good decision regardless of outcome, write it down. Study it. Figure out what made it possible. Then make a plan to create more of those conditions. If your best trades happen when you've had a good night's sleep and exercised in the morning, prioritize sleep and exercise. If your best trades happen when you've done thorough preparation the night before, build that preparation into your routine. If your best trades happen when you're calm and detached, develop practices that cultivate calm and detachment. The solution, focused approach doesn't ignore problems, but it puts problems in their proper place. They're not evidence of your fundamental brokenness. They're gaps between your current performance and your best performance. Your best performance shows you what's possible. Your average performance shows you where you have room to grow. Key takeaway: you already know how to succeed. You've done it before. The key to consistent success isn't fixing what's wrong with you. It's identifying and replicating what you do when you're at your best. Reflection prompt. Think of a recent success in any domain. What were the specific conditions, mindsets, and behaviors that made it possible? How can you create more of those conditions? Chapter 18. The Daily Practices. Chapter Summary. Sustainable high performance doesn't come from occasional heroic efforts. It comes from daily practices that compound over time. This chapter provides a framework for developing your personal performance routine, practices for physical energy, emotional balance, mental clarity, and spiritual connection. Structure creates freedom. Routine enables creativity. Deep dive: the architecture of consistent excellence. People often imagine that high performers live glamorous, unstructured lives of creative freedom. The reality is the opposite. Elite performers are among the most structured people on the planet. They have routines, they have rituals, they do specific things at specific times in specific ways. Why? Because structure creates freedom. When you have a set routine for the fundamentals, when you eat, when you exercise, when you prepare, when you review, you don't have to spend mental energy deciding these things. They're automatic. This frees your creative energy for what actually matters. Generating ideas, making decisions, connecting with people. The alternative is decision fatigue. Every choice you make throughout the day depletes your limited reserves of willpower. If you're deciding what to eat, when to work out, how to organize your morning, you're bleeding cognitive resources that you then don't have available for trading decisions or important conversations. Let me share the components of an effective daily performance practice. First, physical energy. Your body is the foundation. If you're exhausted, everything suffers. Your cognition, your emotional regulation, your decision-making. Prioritizing sleep, exercise, and nutrition isn't optional for high performers. It's the base of the pyramid. I start every day with exercise, not because I love working out, but because I've learned that on days I exercise, everything else goes better. My energy is higher, my focus is sharper, my mood is more stable. The 30-minute investment pays dividends all day. Sleep is equally critical. The research is clear. Cognitive performance degrades significantly with sleep deprivation. You may not notice it subjectively, but your decision-making is impaired. Traders who brag about sleeping 4 hours a night are announcing that they're operating with reduced capacity. Not impressive. Second, emotional balance. Your emotional state determines the quality of your decisions. People in negative emotional states make systematically worse choices than people in positive or neutral states. They're more risk-averse in some situations and more impulsive in others. Their perception narrows. Maintaining emotional balance requires both prevention and intervention. Prevention means structuring your life to minimize unnecessary stressors, toxic relationships, chronic time pressure, unresolved conflicts. Intervention means having practices that restore emotional equilibrium when you're dysregulated. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for emotional regulation. A daily practice of even 10 to 15 minutes builds the capacity to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. You learn to notice anger or fear arising without immediately acting on it. That pause, that space between stimulus and response, is where freedom lives. Third, mental clarity. Your mind needs periods of deep focus and periods of rest. Constant partial attention, the state most people live in, always half distracted by notifications and inputs, produces mediocre thinking. I structure my days around periods of focused work, followed by genuine breaks. During focused work, there are no phones, no email, no interruptions. During breaks, I step away completely, go for a walk, play with the cats, do something physical. This rhythm allows me to sustain high-quality cognitive output for more hours than if I tried to grind straight through. Fourth, spiritual connection. This doesn't have to be religious. It's about having something larger than yourself that gives your efforts meaning. When trading is going badly, when relationships are strained, when nothing seems to be working, connection to purpose sustains you. For me, this connection comes through relationships. With family, with the traders I mentor, even with my rescue cats. It comes through intellectual curiosity, the joy of discovering new ideas. It comes through gratitude practice, actively noticing what's good in my life rather than fixating on problems. Healthier and more resilient. They sleep better. They have better relationships. On gratitude is remarkable practice, actively noticing what's good in my life rather than fixating on problems. Gratitude deserves special emphasis. The research on gratitude is remarkable. People who regularly practice gratitude are happier, healthier, and more resilient. They sleep better. They have better relationships. They're more optimistic without being delusional. A simple gratitude practice takes 2 minutes. Each morning or evening, write down 3 things you're genuinely grateful for. Not generic things, specific things from that day. The quality of your sleep. A conversation with a friend. A good cup of coffee. The practice trains your brain to scan for positives rather than fixating on negatives. Key takeaway. Sustainable excellence isn't about heroic effort. It's about daily practices that compound. Structure your fundamentals. Sleep, exercise, focus, emotional regulation, and the big achievements will follow. Reflection prompt. What's one daily practice you could implement this week that would improve your performance capacity? What's the smallest version you could commit to consistently? Chapter 19. The Net Worth Mirror. Chapter summary. Your financial results are not random. They're a direct reflection of your psychological programming, specifically your beliefs about what you deserve. This chapter explores the often hidden relationship between self-worth and net worth and provides tools for identifying and releasing the limiting beliefs that cap your success. Deep dive. Why you have exactly what you deserve. This is going to be uncomfortable, but it's one of the most important things you'll ever understand about success. Your financial results, your income, your net worth, your trading profits are not accidents. They're not determined by the market, by luck, by the economy, or by other people. They're determined by your internal programming about what you deserve. I'm not saying this to blame anyone for their circumstances. I'm saying it because until you accept that your results reflect your programming, you'll remain powerless to change those results. Here's how it works. Throughout your life, you've accumulated beliefs about money, success, and self-worth. Some of these beliefs are conscious. Most are not. They came from parents, teachers, religious teaching, cultural messages, and personal experiences. Some people absorbed the message that money is the root of evil, that rich people are greedy, that wanting more than you need is sinful. Others absorb that they're not smart enough or talented enough to deserve significant wealth. Others learned that money should only come from hard physical labor, and trading, which involves no physical effort, somehow doesn't count. These beliefs operate like a thermostat. When your financial results exceed the level your beliefs permit, you get uncomfortable. The discomfort drives behavior that brings results back down to the programmed level. You sabotage yourself. You make uncharacteristic mistakes. You give money back. I've seen this pattern countless times. A trader consistently makes money, builds his account to a certain level, then does something inexplicable, takes a massive risk, ignores all his rules, obliterates his gains. Then he returns to his normal profitable trading until he hits the ceiling again. From the outside, it looks insane. Why would someone who knows how to make money keep destroying his own success? But from the inside, it makes perfect sense. His internal thermostat is set at a certain level. When results exceed that level, the discomfort of violating his programming becomes unbearable. The sabotage relieves the discomfort by bringing results back in line with beliefs. The solution isn't to try harder. Trying harder doesn't change the thermostat. The solution is to identify and change the beliefs that set the limit. This work requires honest self-examination. You have to look at your actual results, not your intentions. Your equity curve, your income history, your net worth trajectory, these are the honest reflection of your programming. If they're not where you want them to be, there's programming to change. Start by noticing patterns. Do you consistently make money up to a point and then lose it? Do you have trouble holding on to windfalls? Do you find ways to spend money as fast as it comes in? These patterns aren't random. They're clues to the underlying beliefs. Then start exploring those beliefs directly. What did you learn about money growing up? What did your parents model? What messages did you absorb from your culture or religion? What do you actually believe? Not what you think you should believe, but what you actually believe about people who have significant wealth. The goal isn't to judge these beliefs. They served a purpose at some point. The goal is to see them clearly and decide whether they still serve you. If they don't, you can change them. Changing beliefs isn't about affirmations or wishful thinking. It's about accumulating experiences that contradict the old belief until the new belief has more evidence behind it. If you believe you can't hold on to money, start by saving small amounts and not touching them. Build evidence that contradicts the old programming. Gradually, the thermostat resets. Key takeaway: your financial results reflect your beliefs about what you deserve. To change your results permanently, you must identify and update the limiting beliefs that cap your success. Reflection prompt: what did you learn about money growing up? What beliefs about wealth and deserving might be operating beneath your conscious awareness? Chapter 20: Integration and the Path Forward. Chapter summary: the principles in this book aren't separate domains, but integrated aspects of a single framework. Understanding and mastering your mental environment. Trading, relationships, performance, they all draw from the same psychological foundation. This chapter brings everything together and provides guidance for your ongoing development. Deep Dive, the unified framework. We've covered a lot of territory. The architecture of the mental environment, the dynamics of belief and perception, the psychology of markets and trading, the dynamics of masculine-feminine polarity, the practices of sustainable performance. These aren't separate topics. They're applications of the same fundamental understanding. Your mental environment determines your experience of reality. Master your inner world and your outer world transforms. Let me connect the threads. The trader who can't cut losses and the man who can't express desire are struggling with the same issue: fear of rejection. Both are letting past painful experiences dictate present behavior. Both are filtering out information that contradicts their fears. Both are creating the very outcomes they're trying to avoid. The trader who gives back profits and the man who sabotages relationships when they get too good are wrestling with the same demon: the belief that they don't deserve success or love. The external circumstances are different, but the internal programming is identical. The trader who can stay calm while a position moves against him and the man who can stay present while a woman tests his frame are demonstrating the same capacity: emotional self-regulation under pressure. This capacity is built through the same practices: meditation, self-awareness, graduated exposure to challenge. This is why working on yourself in one domain benefits all domains. When you do the psychological work to become a better trader, you're also doing the work to become a better partner, a better leader, a better human being. The specific skills differ, but the underlying capacities, self-awareness, emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, authentic presence, transfer completely. The path forward is continuous. There's no arrival point where you're done with personal development. The environment keeps changing. New challenges emerge. Old patterns resurface under stress. The work is ongoing, but the work gets easier. Not because the challenges diminish, but because you build capacity. Each fear you face reduces the power of fear overall. Each belief you update makes future belief updating easier. Each time you choose the difficult right action over the easy wrong one, you strengthen the muscle of integrity. Here's what I want you to take from this book. You are not broken. You are not deficient. You are carrying programming, beliefs, fears, patterns that you didn't choose, but that you can change. The capacity for change is built into your mental architecture. You have the tools, you have the understanding. Now you need the willingness to apply them consistently. Start small. Pick one pattern you want to change, one fear you want to face, one belief you want to examine. Work on it consistently. Notice the results. Build from there. The most important step is the decision to take full responsibility for your experience. Not blame, responsibility. The recognition that your results, your emotions, your relationships, your success, all of it flows from your mental environment. And your mental environment is yours to shape. When you truly accept this, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop waiting for the market to cooperate, for the right person to appear, for conditions to be perfect. You start working on the only thing you can control, yourself. And paradoxically, that's when the external world starts cooperating. When you master your inner world, you start seeing opportunities you missed before. You start making decisions you couldn't make before. You start attracting people and circumstances aligned with your new internal state. This isn't magic. It's cause and effect. Your mental environment filters what you perceive and shapes what you do. Change the filter and you perceive different possibilities. Change the programming and you take different actions. Different actions produce different results. The disciplined trader, the magnetic man, the fulfilled human being, these aren't separate identities. They're expressions of the same thing. A mind that has been examined, understood, and consciously shaped. The work is yours to do. Key takeaway: all domains of life are expressions of the same underlying mental programming. Master your inner world, and every outer world you inhabit transforms. Reflection prompt: what's the single most important pattern you want to change? What's the smallest, most concrete step you could take toward changing it, starting today? Epilogue: the never-ending beginning. Every ending is a beginning. Every insight opens new questions. Every level of mastery reveals new challenges. This book has given you a framework, a way of understanding how your mind works and how to work with it. But the actual work is yours. The understanding is valuable only to the extent that you apply it. Application means doing the exercises, facing the fears, examining the beliefs, building the practices, making the uncomfortable choices that align with who you want to become rather than who you've been programmed to be. There will be setbacks. That's part of the process. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The goal isn't to eliminate every negative pattern, it's to catch them faster, recover quicker, and learn more each time. Remember that the quality of your life is not determined by external circumstances. It's determined by the quality of your mental environment. Your beliefs, your emotional charges, your perceptual filters. These are within your power to change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely, permanently, transformatively. The work you do on yourself is the most important work you'll ever do. It determines everything else. It determines what you perceive, what you attempt, what you achieve, and how you experience the journey. I wish you well on yours.